Welcome to the Fix the Mix Challenge for June. We're very excited to be here. We love doing these. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new, welcome for the first time. These are a lot of fun. We're just here to have a ton of fun, get a ton of information, hang out with each other, ask great questions, and we get pretty geeked out about doing these. I know Jake and Dana are excited. Michael, you excited as well?
I'm stoked, Caleb.
If you don't know who we are, my name is Caleb Lovelace. I'm the Director of Education for Mastering.com. I've been teaching for about 15 years in different respects and teaching music, and I've also been in the industry doing lots of different things over the years, from A&R to creation to artist development and licensing for about 25 years. Below me is Dane Holmes. He's also a great producer, mix and mastering engineer. He's done a ton in the licensing world. He's actually worked with some amazing top 10 artists, as well as brands like Coke, Cadillac, Intel, Target, Airbnb. You did a little film with Alex Honnold once, right? That climbing guy.
Yeah, I did.
That was pretty cool.
Had a Stranger Things placement.
Oh yeah, Stranger Things as well.
Too. That's my favorite.
Dane's an amazing guy. He was a vocal performance major. He sings opera. We got to hear it a couple of Fix the Mixes ago. It's pretty impressive stuff. Below him, we got Michael Gilbride. He's the general manager of Mastering.com. He's the reason you're all here. He's working with partners and sending emails out and just making sure we get as many people here as want to be here to get the help we need. We couldn't do any of this without Michael behind the scenes, pulling the levers and making everything work. So he's a great manager of Mastering.com. He retired from Wall Street at a young age, decided to be a musician, and now works with us at Mastering.com. Really glad to have him. The whiz kid, we call him.
Terrible financial decision, good for my happiness.
That's very true. I've heard the numbers you gave up on Wall Street to do that. It's
all to be here with you, folks.
Whew, it's shocking. Below him, last but not least, of course, Mr. Jake Codeweiss. He's been doing this for a long time too, educating, and also been in the music industry since a very young age. I think he was signed pretty shortly after high school to a major contract and did touring and did all the music there, but also has done a lot of music licensing and as well since then, in addition to his engineering and production skills. Over 1,500 placements over the years, which is just insane. It's keeping the lights on, I'm sure, Jake. So that's awesome. We're happy to have Jake here today. He's going to be one of the head people mixing for us in the next few days. So we're going to get to watch him do this stuff live. And yeah, excited to. If you didn't know who we were, now you know a little bit about us. We're Mastering.com. We're coming to you live today for Fix the Mix Challenge. Just a couple little housekeeping items. Again, if you want to go to your chat settings and make sure everything is set to everyone, that way everyone can see the questions you have, which is helpful. We're all here together. We're trying to make it work. We're trying to help inform each other. So change that to everything. Then you can talk to everyone, not just us. And then you also want to go into your Zoom settings. You can find that a couple different places, but find those settings and go in and make sure you turn original sound for musicians on. You also want to check the boxes for high fidelity music mode and stereo audio. If not, you're going to be hearing all of this in mono potentially, which is just not going to sound very good and you won't get very much out of it. So make sure you go in original sound for musicians, high fidelity music mode, and stereo audio. Make sure that's all ready to go.
Caleb, do you have a slide on the giveaway? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Giveaway?
Yeah, you want me to?
Yep.
So for everybody coming from Eventide's list. So this is sponsored by Eventide. We're going to be doing some cool giveaways for them. If you've been to this Fix the Mix before, you know the rules. The giveaways happen on the third day of the event. So you have to be here on day 3. That's how we keep you around. You have to be here on day 3. We're going to drop a Google form in the chat on that third day. And then we're going to pull from a hat. We're going to be giving away licenses for Black Hole, Split EQ, Elevate, SP 2016 Reverb, bunch of amazing plugins from Eventide. We're going to be using all of their plugins on the Fix the Mix challenge. So stick around until day 3. If anybody asks when we're doing the giveaway, we're doing it day 3. I always say this. Wait for day 3. If you want updates and you want access to the replays, join our Skool community. I'm going to post the link in the chat a couple times. It's our private community. It's where we post all updates on Fix the Mix. It's when we post the replays in the classroom section. So if you aren't in it already, join the Skool group. I'll keep posting that link in there. And then last housekeeping item, I will be sending out replay emails tonight. So if you're not a Skool group, keep an eye on your inbox. I'll be sending replay emails there as well.
Absolutely. Yep. Make sure you get in that Skool group. It's totally free. Just go in there. It's just our way of helping you all be able to continue to communicate with each other. And it's where we post the replays and everything like that. It's a cool way you can start interacting with each other, hanging out, asking questions. It gives you an opportunity to do all of that. So definitely make sure you sign up for that Skool group. And yes, welcome to our sponsor for this Fix the Mix, Eventide. We love to partner with really cool brands that are out there that we really appreciate what they're doing. Of course, we're never going to say you have to use a particular thing, a particular plugin, or any of that. We say, learn the tools that you have, learn your stock tools. However, we do love a lot of the companies that are out there who are doing very innovative things. And of plugin companies who are out there, Eventide are doing things that really no one else is doing. They have some plugins that really don't exist anywhere else and do some really, really cool things. So we're proud to sponsor with them or to partner with them for this Fix the Mix challenge. And we definitely are going to show you some of their tools that they have and some of the stuff they offer. So very cool company. Really glad to have them. Welcome if you're from their email list. Welcome into the Fix the Mix. So the overview for the next 3 days, every day we're going to have a Zoom training. I'm going to do that every day. We'll just do a short, usually be about 30 minutes, and I'm just going to go over some philosophy with all of you. We're just going to focus on some high-level points to kind of watch when Jake's doing his live demos. And so I'll present those to you every day. And then we're going to, like I said, get into mixing philosophy. But then most of what we'll do is just watch it all live. And that's an opportunity for you to see it being done, ask questions. You can drop questions in the chat as we're going through. But we're just going to walk you through the entire process. And like I said, I'll point out a few things to really focus on. But we're not really holding anything back. We just want to demonstrate the entire process and give you an opportunity to get as much as you can out of it. And then every day when we're done, we're going to give you some action items that'll allow you to take what you've been learning, what we've been presenting about, and practice on it with your own mix. So hopefully you all have a mix that you can work on. If you don't, you can go to somewhere like Cambridge or somewhere and download some stems or some tracks, and you could use those. But make sure you have something to work on so that you can take what we're learning, not just watch it and observe it, but then put it into practice kinesthetically. So a lot of people learn better by doing. So you want to go ahead and do that as well. But the goal for the next 3 days is really help you learn some mindsets and philosophies that can help you fix your mix. I would recommend the best way to observe everything that we're going to be doing for the next 3 days is not to get hung up on small details, but observe big philosophies. Most of the small details, like how to use a certain plugin, we'll talk about some of that, but if you're lost on little things like that, that is usually so much better learned through something like YouTube or Google. The harder things are big picture stuff and how it all comes together. And so we're really going to try to focus on big picture philosophies and mindsets. And if you can stay in that headspace of observing the big picture mindset and philosophies, you'll get a lot more out of this than if you get hung up on the little details. So for the little details, definitely have a notepad ready that you can write down questions that you have that might be kind of smaller detail stuff that you can Google or YouTube, and so you don't get hung up on them. Just write them down. You can come back to that later, and then stay focused on the big picture stuff. That'll move the needle most for you. But of course, ask any questions you have. There's no dumb questions. You can drop those in the chat. What's fun about this challenge? Well, again, we're not going to hold back. We're showing you our entire process. There's nothing that you can't ask about. We're not here to keep the good stuff from you or something like that. We're going to give you as much as we can, and we're happy to discuss anything. We just want to help your mixes get better and learn as a community of musicians. You'll watch a ton of valuable demonstration. That's where you'll get the most out of this, I think. You get to ask questions. and be a part of a like-minded community. Once again, if you're not in the school group, go ahead and get in that school group, start interacting, start networking with people, post your stuff, get feedback. That's all really, really valuable if you take advantage of it. I know sometimes it's easy to just kind of be on our little islands alone, but we're much better off if we're a part of a community. We're much better off if we can interact with people, ask questions, and engage with other people. So I highly recommend you get part of that school group. And what's tricky about this challenge? Well, it is only 3 days, so let's be realistic about what we can teach you. Can we teach you everything in the universe about mixing in 3 days? Of course not. That's why we're focused on the big picture, right? We're focused on the big principles that will move the needle the most. The little details can be figured out much easier once you have the right mindset. Everyone is at a different level. So we have a community where there's almost 800 people on this call right now. There's going to be people who are advanced. There's going to be people who are intermediate, people who are beginners. And that's totally fine. If you're more beginner, don't be afraid to ask questions. It's totally fine. But again, I would recommend you having a notepad that you can write a few things down, because that's the best way for you to learn some of that stuff that we're not going to really take the time to go over, the little things and the plugins and certain things like that to a level that you probably need. If you're intermediate or advanced, we're probably going to be shooting more at your target area, help the beginners out. If you're advanced, we'll get deeper and deeper as we go through the 3 days. So don't worry, we're going to start off at basic level, but we're going to move into more and more complex concepts as we go through. We also know that everyone's in a different room. Everyone has different ear training and different speakers and different headphones they're listening on. So is it all going to sound the same to everyone? Of course not. You need to be aware of that, because sometimes we might hearing something and it might not even be accurate. Maybe a build-up frequency in our headphones. I don't know if you know, but no headphones are totally accurate. No set of speakers are totally accurate. And the rooms that we're in are actually troublesome when it comes to accuracy. They usually change the sound. If you're not familiar with this, there's something called room modes, which means there's a buildup or an attenuation of sound at certain points in your room, depending on how much treatment you have and the kind of speakers you have. It's possible that in your listening position, you could be hearing sound plus or minus 12 dB of accurate. So let's not get hung up on some of the frequencies. If we're focusing on that, we're probably missing the point, because we might not even be hearing it accurate to begin with. I know Jake's room and Dane's rooms are very accurate. So in terms of some of those frequencies, better to assume that there might be something else going on if you're getting hung up on that. But just be aware. And that's something we'll actually show you ways of working around. So don't worry, we're going to show you ways to be more analytical, to use certain tools to assess all of this, not just what we're limited to by our room, our speakers, or our headphones. So stay tuned. We're going to have some workarounds for that. All right. I want to present to you really quick before we move deeper into the presentation today, the mix we want to fix. So this mix is not good. We're going to play it for you now, and you'll notice that it is not good. That is the point, because we're going to fix it. We're going to start by showing you the mix that we're going to fix. So I feel like I'm Dr. Seuss right now. We're going to do this in a box with some rocks.
Is this mix supposed to be good, Caleb?
This mix is not supposed to be good, actually. Okay. So, but I want to share it with you anyway. Who wants to do that, Jake or Dane?
I got it. I have it pulled up right in front of me.
Okay. Let me stop sharing.
Yep.
And you can share. We're going to show you the mix that we'll fix with a mouse in a house.
Thank you, Doctor.
Let's make sure my sound is good. Sharing my desktop. Okay. Y'all should be seeing this and should be able to hear this as well. One's in chat if we're good, if you guys can hear this in stereo. I'm not seeing the chat, so if you guys can just give me the thumbs up.
Looks good.
Sounds good. We'll go ahead and take a listen.
So what are you guys hearing as you listen through that? What are you hearing that's wrong with this mix?
Highs, weak, muddy, inconsistency, track volumes. Somebody just said poo. Vocal, flipping, sounds dull, mono, volume, phasing, vocals up and down, unbalanced pumping. So
There's
This
one-
one's interesting. 'cause
There's
it's
one
not-
issue.
It's not as blatantly bad as they used to be.
Yeah, we tried to make it a little less bad, actually, make it more like maybe an amateur mix.
they pulled on my leash a little bit.
Ah, someone got it. Phase. You hear that horrible phase in the vocals? Vocals need their own day.
Mm-hmm.
They do. They do.
So boxiness, mud, the high ends are brittle. The volume isn't in alignment.
Yeah, phasing is a interesting thing that's hard to describe. It makes you feel weird. It's more of a when you feel it, you can't ignore it next time you.
I like to describe it as like a smearing across the stereo field.
Yeah, it's an unnatural sort of spatial effect in a way. That's
Like frequency smearing.
All right, cool. So, I mean, this is what we're going to be working on for the next couple of days. We're actually going to make this mix sound good. But before we do that, we're going to give you an opportunity to learn to see a mix a little differently than maybe you have done before. And that's where we start with all of this. We're not going to start by mixing today. We're actually going to start by looking for some more perspective. Let's see what I mean by that. We're going to learn to see your mix in a different light by learning to think like a mastering engineer. Okay? It's not what usually happens, and a lot of people consider mastering kind of a dark art. They don't really understand it. But we've learned something over the years. We've been teaching mastering engineers for nearly 10 years, and we learned something from them along the way. And what we learned is that while we would train mastering engineers, a lot of them would comment to us that they were learning mastering and that was fun and they appreciated that. It was demystifying this kind of dark magic that they'd always thought it was. It's not dark magic. It's much more simple. It's hard to learn, but it's actually quite simple. But they were also learning something else, which was that they were getting a perspective on their mixes and even on their productions that they didn't have before. It was making their mixes and even their creativity in production better. It was increasing their abilities by learning mastering. So there was something about learning mastering that was affecting the rest of the process. We have eventually realized that it is this perspective you get from mastering, which is different than any other part of the process in one very fundamental way. Production's very creative. Mixing is pretty creative, but also a bit objective. There are standards to go by. There are things that make music sound good coming out of speakers that we shoot for. There's balance. There's different things. Mastering is almost entirely, if not entirely, objective. It's left-brained. It's not about creativity anymore. And that is a different way to observe music that a lot of people don't fully know how to do. And so what was happening is that when we're training these mastering engineers to go on a deep dive into the more left-brained technical parts of the music creation process, it was filling in holes, it was filling in gaps in the rest of the process and giving them a totally different kind of left brain perspective that was changing how they were observing music. And we said, aha, there's something to this. Maybe we could teach people how to be better producers and mix engineers through learning mastering, not have it be this dark art, demystify it, but also use it as a tool to then understand the rest of the process better. And this has been kind of the revolutionary premise of our flagship program, the reverse engineer. So we're learning in reverse. It's giving people the insight to do that. So we're going to share with you a little bit about how to do that today, something that you can now take back to the mixes that you have right now and what we're going to use to gain perspective for the mix that we're going to fix over the next 3 days. Let me explain a little bit more about what that means. Again, mastering is left-brained. It's not creative, it's measurable. So we're going to use measurement tools, analysis and metering tools to observe music. that's going to indicate certain things about what's going on with our mixes. And we're also going to make sure that we tie in references, which is another thing that we don't always do in production. We might do it in mixing. We definitely do it in mastering, and the ability to not only use references, but use them the correct way. Not everyone knows how to actually approach them in terms of mindset and as far as what's valuable about them. So we're going to get into that as well today. And just to be clear, we're not going to try to teach you mastering today. That's not the point. We're going to try to teach you to think like a mastering engineer a little bit, because really to learn mastering, it takes time. There's no shortcuts for this. When we're talking about left brain technical stuff, that's just stuff that needs to be practiced and practiced and practiced. And it starts with some much deeper principles like room correction. So like, for example, in our program, when students come in, one of the very first things we work with them on is getting their rooms accurate so that they can trust them. Why do we do that? Well, what's the point of the rest of the process if what you're hearing isn't accurate? The next thing we do with people is help them improve their ears so that they can start to hear music and sound in a totally different way, in a way that 99% of the planet doesn't know how to do. So we do intensive ear training, and then and only then do we dive into an understanding of the tools that we use and how to think more critically and analyze. But if you don't have the room right and you don't have ear training, then you probably aren't learning to use the tools right, and then we're not using the tools right, and everything has broken because the beginning is broken. Right. So that would take time. We can't do that in 3 days. We can't do that in 1 day, which is the only day we're going to focus on this mastering part. Just know that that's what it would take to do it more fully. It's important to understand that. But we are going to teach you to think like a mastering engineer a little bit more. So how can we use these tools of mastering to be useful for the mixes that we're going to be focused on for this week? Well, again, we're going to harness the power of the reference track. We're going to learn to observe it the right way. We're also going to use frequency analyzers to learn to push back on your mix. This is something a mastering engineer would do. They would pull in a mix. They're using their ears, but there's also analysis tools that we look at problems through. We're going to show you how to use those tools because they will give you insight. Frequency analyzer is one of them. We're also going to analyze dynamics. We're going to observe 3D space to push back on your mix. So this would include that phasing issue that we have, but also painting in dimensions of space, width being one of those, right? And a lot of people say, oh, I'm sending it off to master. Hopefully they can, improve the quality and make it have more width. Well, that's not really the goal of the mastering engineer necessarily. Where's the best place to create width, for example? In the master? You risk running into phasing problems and other things. There are ways to do it if you're very, very skilled, but where's the best place to create width? In the mix. So we can observe that as a mastering engineer and push back and learn how to create more width in our mixes so that we don't have to do that in the master. We can also learn how limiting exposes problems. There's something that happens when you apply a limiter. I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you're trying to bring your song up to industry standard volume and you apply that limiter, when you pump energy into a song, the frequencies exacerbate. The compression that's there exacerbates. And so what happens is good things become more apparent and bad things become more apparent. So both things happen. And so there's a lot we can learn from just sometimes putting a limiter on and seeing what happens, especially if all the other stuff, if you're more beginner and all this other stuff I've talked about is sounding a little bit foreign, maybe just using a limiter to expose problems might be valuable to you. And we're going to learn this end in mind perspective. So that's really the focus of what we're going to do today. We're going to learn to think like a mastering engineer. All right. In terms of reference tracks, Dane will be using one today. Jake will be using one the rest of the trip. This will be something that some of you will feel confused by. How do we find the right reference tracks is a question commonly asked. How do we observe them? It's really easy to get caught up on stuff because the songs sound different that actually don't matter. So we need to learn to observe them the correct way. We'll show you about that. But really, reference tracks are what ground us. How many of you have struggled in the past with doing mix or master or production where you just spend so much time on it that you just get way too close to it, right? And your ears start playing tricks on you. Is that a realistic thing that happens? I know it's happened to me for 10 years, 15 years, and it was very troublesome to my workflow. And you'd think something was great, and then you listen to it a little while later and you go, oh man, this sounds terrible. Or you take it out in the car and it sounds terrible. Well, reference tracks ground us to a technical anchor. We're comparing it to something that is, and hopefully we would choose something that's mixed and mastered well, something that could be a guide that can correct our ears or bring us back down into reality, right? So that's what the value is here. It serves as a guide for mixing and mastering decisions. We'll use that this week. We're also going to be using, like I said, frequency analyzers. I just wanted to give you an example on the screen of a couple of them, what they look like. These are both frequency analyzers. The thing to understand about frequency analyzers, and the ones we're going to use today, for example, is how they work. They are all different. So some of them, for example, the left-hand side of the screen there, that's showing a pretty balanced spectrum of frequencies. So from the lows to the highs, there's a couple little waves in there, but for the most part, that's pretty balanced. And that's what you would want to look for in a frequency analyzer that works like that. Now, contrast that with what's on the right-hand side. Sorry for the grainy images. I should probably replace these. But this one is also indicating a balanced frequency response. It's just, it looks different. Some frequency analyzers start with the low end being the highest point and kind of do a diagonal curve down. In fact, the one we're going to use today, the Paz analyzer, looks more like a slanted curve that if you listened to all the top 40 music would have pretty much a similar curve. It would be the same. But you just need to know that about the analyzer. If it's something that trickles down or has a curve on it, and that's correct, or that's what we're going for, you wouldn't want to make it flat, right? You'd want it to have the correct curve. So doesn't matter which frequency analyzer you use. You just need to listen to some music through it and notice how a good mix or master, what it looks like, right, when you observe it. So be aware of that. Choose one that works for you, and then observe from there. And just a side note, if you got a song, example, the one that we would get from Jake right now, this less than ideal mix, you would have to do a lot of EQ to correct all the stuff going wrong with it. And the idea of mastering is not to do that. If you were mastering a song and it looked like what's on the left there, those aren't problems that should be fixed in the master. Where should they be fixed? Certainly in the mix.
It says send it back.
Send it back.
Send it back.
You're trying to solve problems that it's not your business to solve. So this is what we're thinking of as a mastering engineer. We understand our limitations, because if you do the moves, what's on the left, it's not going to sound good. No matter what, it's just not going to sound good. There's no way to correct that. It should look like what's more on the right. That would be a more reasonable mastering EQ. Okay, that's just subtle, broad, gentle brush strokes, which is where the song should be at before you master it. These are the things we see all the time. How many times have I received a master or a mix from somebody and I would have to do something like what's on the left to fix it? Then I know it's time to what we call push back, get in contact with the mix engineer and solve some of the problems before it comes to master. So that same ideology, that same technique is what we're going to use to push back on our mixes now. We're also going to assess dynamic balance. This is something you can observe sometimes just in the waveform. So if you get a bounce down to master, it will come in a stereo file like this, and you'll be able to observe waveform transients. Now, if you got something like this, you might be in trouble as a mastering engineer. This is something you learn. So you start to try to compress or limit something like this, and you realize that your compressor or your limiter isn't working properly. So it limits your ability to get it to volume and to control the transients properly. As a mastering engineer, you're limited because it's very hard to correct this. This is something that, once again, should be fixed in the mix. Okay. So if we're seeing something like this, it's another opportunity for us to, again, push back. Maybe you work with the engineer, maybe the snare or something is way too transient heavy, and it's going to make our compressors and limiters very useless. We're not going to be able to get it the polish it needs, or the compression it needs, or the limit it needs to get it to volume. It will just mess with our compressors.
You're going to end up having a clip so much it's going to distort.
Yeah, it would just, it's not ideal, right? And we're going for ideal. Mastering is kind of a execution of ideal situations that you try to create before you master it, not wait to master to fix. And then we're going to look at what happens when you add a limiter. I talked about that earlier. When we pump a lot of sonic energy into that, you'll hear that it makes the problems worse. It's easier to identify problems, and it will also mess with your limiter if things aren't done properly. And it's a dance. It's not just the way to get to loudness. This is something we learned as a mastering engineer. The way to get that industry standard loudness and punch that everyone wants is a dance, not just with compression and limiting, but also EQ and volume and everything, and how they're all working together. In fact, EQ might even be more important to getting to a loud volume than compression would be. So everything needs balance, everything needs control, and then a mastering engineer can really take it to the moon and make that great sounding master. All right, that's it for me. Those are the things to focus on. Dane's going to now take over. He's going to walk us through how he would observe this song as a mastering engineer. Again, it's just a demonstration for you to pick up on how maybe you could do this with your own material, to gain some insights before we go into day 2 and day 3, where we will actually fix the mixes.
Cool. All right, sharing my screen again.
Dane's muted.
All right, now we're good. Okay, so as Caleb already kind of beautifully outlined, we're basically just going to demonstrate every point that he made there, starting with frequency analysis. So we'll go ahead and pull in a reference first and kind of compare the two from a standpoint of analysis, meaning we're going to be looking objectively at the frequency spectrum and the difference between the frequency spectrum of the reference song and this before mix. So let me pull in the band that we're working with is Mood Light. I don't know if you mentioned that, Caleb, but they're actually, I think we might actually have a couple of the members here on the call. Mood Light, great artist, and they sent me this reference, Fire for You. So
Check out Mood Light, by the way. Thanks for letting us use your song for this demonstration.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do here is first I want to actually just make some, like, before we even pull up an analyzer or anything, I want to kind of match this reference in volume. So let me go ahead and just hit play here. I'm peaking at around, so I'm just looking at the waveform, I can see we're peaking around like 3 here. Let's go ahead and just use our ears though to... So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of line up these, because that's probably where their chorus is. So we're still quite a bit over. I'm going to pull this one up a little bit, pull this one down just a hair. So that's good enough in my opinion. And then what I'm going to do here is put a frequency analyzer by Waves. It's the PAS analyzer. You can use the free Voxengo span as well, but one that we really love to use just because it's really great at just giving you kind of like a big picture overview of what that frequency spectrum looks like. So if I pull up Waves, PAS analyzer, let's see there, stereo. I'm going to put it there, and I'm going to put it also on this guy here. So now I have this rough master is actually our reference. I'll just go ahead and label it that, and this will be called the before mix. So now we have both of these side by side. And again, what I want you to do, the point of doing this is just to be able to connect what we're hearing in terms of frequencies with what we're seeing here on the analyzer. So think about all the things when we played this mix, think about all the things that you were typing out, too much bass, kick and bass relationship, maybe vocal too dynamic or whatever those notes were. And let's see if we can't make some connections to what we're seeing here on the analyzer. Okay, so like really quick, high level, what do you notice? What do you notice is like the biggest difference? And I don't see the chat. Maybe I'll pull the chat up actually really quick. What do you feel like is the biggest difference there between those two? The highs.
Aside from volume.
Yeah, aside from volume. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a general kind of balance issue between the low end and the high end. And obviously this one isn't limited, it's not compressed, it's not mastered, and so there's that, right? So we're hearing an energy difference, but aside from that, just the frequencies, you can see that the reference mix really kind of gradually slopes down quite a bit. And especially like towards this 2K kind of 1.5 range, it really drops off, right? And so we have this mix here, this master, that's very kind of flat and kind of from an overall perspective.
More gradual. It's still sloping, but it's
still,
more gradual.
It's still sloping, but exactly, it's more gradual instead of really kind of like tanking off here at the end. And listen to that. Yeah, listen. I'm going to go back and forth and just, again, we're making that connection between what we're hearing, what we're seeing.
Dan, your video is a little bit choppy. Do you think you can stop share and then reshare?
Yeah. Let me.
I'm gonna reset a little bit. See if that helps. Choppy on my end. Anyway.
Wasn't choppy for me.
No, it could be me.
Cool. We'll do it anyways.
Not choppy? No, it's just me. Sorry, guys.
Okay, so again, just listen to the lack of high end. You'll hear it. You got this frequency up here, which is when they have some sibilance, but like even without the sibilance, it's really, there's a lot of energy above, that kind of 1.5 to 2K range. Cool. So that's cool. And then what else do we notice about kind of the low end? What are some things you're observing about the low end? Let me pull up my chat again. Just rejoined. Okay. Andreas says it's weak low end, muddy. Yeah. Okay. Too much sub. Yeah. So for me, it's really just like, it's a balance issue, right? It's a balance between like the kick and the bass. The low end elements that are in that mix are not coming through. Let's see if there's a way that this is a little bit trickier to kind of tell, but let's see if there's a way that we can tell if that balance is skewed just by looking at the analysis. Okay, right here, if you guys notice, there's a bass note that you'll be able to hear that kind of like sticks up and pokes out. And it really kind of ascends above that kick, right? And notice how the kick is way down here and the bass is like way up here, right? So one of the things, like Caleb was saying, that we're doing here is we're not just looking, okay, like what's the overall frequency difference so that we can affect that in the master. The idea is to say, okay, end of mind perspective, what does that tell me about what I need to do? Is there any kind of like EQ trickery that we need to do, or like what's the main thing that we need to do there to fix that? It's a rather simple answer. It's like, okay, add punch, turn down the bass, and turn up the kick. Right? Would you agree, Jake? Turn up the kick, turn down the bass.
Volume is everything.
Volume is everything.
You also notice that the mids on the before mix, the bad one, they're as high as the low end is.
Right.
If you're talking about muddy, they're as high as the low end is. You notice on the other one, they're pretty high up there, but you notice the highest frequency is about 60 hertz, and it does taper down to 1K and then on from there. Whereas this one is like just as high at 1K as it is at 60 hertz. And you have to observe that the square on that PAS analyzer is 20 dB of volume. So it's actually, if there's, a half a square of a bump or something like that, that's a lot. It's 10 dB.
Right.
And so you're seeing those mid frequencies are actually really hyped. That's where all the mud you guys are hearing are coming from. Right. So we're connecting our ears and our eyes. Now we start thinking about, okay, so which instruments are causing these problems?
Yeah.
If I was to write back to a mix engineer, what would I tell him to do to fix these problems?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to go back in and tell them to do all these complex things, right? Yeah, sidechain, bass, and kick would be great, but like your first line of defense here is literally just rebalancing the volume in a way that's going to give you more punch from the kick, which is to turn up the kick and turn down the bass. But what's cool about this is there's also some dynamic things that we can start to think about, right? The bass, if you notice, kind of only pops up in this one area. Check this out as I play this. Go ahead and pay attention to this like 125. Did you notice how the bass disappears and goes and swoops like, what's the word I'm looking for? It goes way down. Right after that, it disappears completely. I'm going to go ahead and clear this and watch how it goes. Whoom. And when it changes to whoom, whoom, luckily I can demonstrate those notes because I'm a bass singer. But watch again. Watch how, and like Caleb said, this is a huge gap. This is a 20 decibel gap from here to here. And watch what happens after we hit that top note. Whoom, whoom, whoom. So there's our fundamental of that note. And then whoom, whoom, whoom is way down here. So that's a bit of a now we can say, okay, there's a bit of a dynamic issue here too, right? And lo and behold, guys, we're kind of moving in and away from this analysis here with EQ. Now we're going to go and observe dynamics through these waveforms. But I'm making the connection between EQ. I'm not just saying, okay, dynamically volume. It's a little bit of EQ as well as volume. And right here you have this huge peak here that exists. And then when we change that note, it goes way down. Whoom, whoom, whoom. I guarantee you that this is coming from that bass note. That's coming from that bass. And then here, when we get the refrain of that same bass note, we get that 125 hertz that's causing this huge spike here.
Well, not only that, but it's piling on top of that vocal where she goes full voice in that upper register, right? So you have this giant bass, like really powerful, huge cycles kind of happening, and then we have a vocal that's stacked up on
Yeah.
top of it,
It's certainly
creating all of that energy, all that sonic energy in that one place.
exactly. It's certainly, to Jake's point, it's certainly not helping, right? But what I'm trying to get at here is this is the kind of hat that you have to wear as a mastering engineer. You have to know how to translate these things into sort of objective information, right? So that you can, you don't go back to your mix engineer and say you suck at mixing, right? That wouldn't be very effective. You'd hurt some feelings, and you wouldn't change anything. But now you can go back and say, hey, I'm noticing that at like for around 125 hertz, we have quite a bit of buildup that's coming from your bass. I'm wondering if you can maybe compress that a little bit more, just be aware of that, and then bring that down relative to, bring the whole track down relative to the kick. I think that'll help me really compress this a lot better. Aside from, the vocal is really too dynamic, right? To Jake's point, like what he was saying, and we need to control that in the mix. That's clearly something that we need to fix and do a lot of dynamic work and leveling work. There's a lot to be done there to kind of even out the vocal, so that when it does start to clash with other instruments, we don't get these crazy buildups that then lead to an inability to master this. I can't master this without like 20 layers of like dynamic control, like dynamics processing.
Yeah, it could also be an EQ thing, because this is all telling a story. So if you have a frequency that's boosting and then you have a big drop off, what that says to me is that there's probably some EQ that's pretty steep going on the low end of that bass to try to, clean up some of the bottom stuff that you don't want or something. That's what the mix engineer was thinking. But I don't know if you guys all know this, but when you do a big steep curve like that, it actually will oftentimes bump the frequency right next to the curve up. So it actually adds like a resonance there through some phasing. And so this is telling me a story of, it's possible, I bet if we went into the mix, that we would see someone who rolled off to a certain frequency. So it's disappearing when it goes down in volume to those other frequencies, but it's also adding some frequencies and resonances right above that because of the EQ. So now I'm starting to think through this kind of mastering lens, stuff I would talk to the mix engineer about, or if it's you, because maybe this is about your stuff that maybe you stopped hearing a long time ago because you've been working on it for so long that the ears have just become adjusted, or maybe it's a problem with your room, stuff that you could solve, right? We're seeing this not just through our ears, but through our eyes as well. Does that make sense to everybody? One's in chat if that makes sense to everybody. It's a totally different way to look at all this stuff.
Yeah.
Can pull you right out of that objectivity loss, that demoitis that we can get when we're too close to what we're working on.
Yeah, and so the point of this demonstration is to show you that we would not master this.
Right.
We would make notes like we're doing. We would internalize these things and provide useful information for the mix engineer, whether that's another engineer, or for many of you artists, that's a note to yourself. This is a fantastic way. And like Caleb was saying in his presentation, this is the whole reason mastering.com exists, is actually because of artists trying to figure out what's the secret mastering. This has to be the missing link to my stuff not sounding great. Nah, actually, it's just learning how to master exposed all these issues in their mix, and force them to go back.
Right.
Well said.
That's the entire reason we exist as a company. That's literally it. It's not because we decided let's teach mastering, engineers how to master or whatever. But yeah,
this is what I learned before I learned to master. I went, I built a house upon bad foundation. I need to go back and rebuild on better foundation and just fill in the gaps of everything that I had been cutting corners on or doing wrong a long time ago. So anyway, we're well aware now, I think, of the problems that exist, at least some of the problems that exist in the low end and the high end here. Now, if we add a limiter to this, let's see if it makes those problems worse or makes them easier to hear. That's the next thing to kind of assess.
I'm gonna actually pull up. You guys from Eventide should know this guy. I'm actually new to this, but have loved using this limiter over the
This is
last.
an incredible limiter.
Yeah, this is
all the newfangled stuff.
This is pretty insane, quite honestly. So, what I'm gonna do, so I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole. For those that don't know this plugin, don't pay attention to all the stuff going on here. We're just going to use this as a regular standard limiter, and I'm going to turn this adaptive gain. This adaptive gain basically allows me to limit separate bands, which is crazy. We won't go into that now. But by turning this off, I now have this limiter looking at the entire frequency spectrum rather than individual bands. So let's go ahead and do what Caleb is saying and see if we can't just apply a limiter and expose these issues even further.
This is a beast of a plugin, so don't get hung up. There's a lot going on here, and you'll want to watch YouTube videos and stuff on this, but it's very capable.
Yep.
But think about the bigger principle here. We're observing frequencies and how the limiter is responding to what is there. That's what's important about this.
I'm going to go ahead and kind of adjust for gain so I don't kill your guys' ears. So I'm going to pull this down here, and then actually I'll leave that there. Right about here, actually, and then I'll start increasing the gain. And your gain reduction, just for those that don't know this plugin, your gain reduction is happening here on the side, right here. Is that too loud?
Oh,
No,
Okay.
it's fine.
I thought Jake was reacting to.
oh, I'm reacting to like the amount that you just keep pulling that slider up and up and up and up.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm at 12 dB. I can't go any further on this particular limiter. Okay, that's not enough. I'm gonna put more into this.
So this is interesting though. This is interesting
Yeah.
though. So that those distorted vocal frequencies, look where they show up on the PAS, because they're total resonant frequencies that are actually the spikes that we were looking at right there. Those spikes that are happening.
Yeah.
Right in the middle at between 500 and 2K. Those are right from the vocal, and those are resonant frequencies. They're the ones helping cause mud too much. And guess what's happening? The limiter is
Reacting to only that.
attracted to those. It's reacting to those frequencies because they're very, very loud. You're hearing it compress those more than anything else and cause that distortion.
Done. Print it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen to that again, and you'll see that as that buildup that Jake pointed out as well, when the bass comes in, that 125 hertz bass clashes with the vocal, we're getting all of that mess buildup, and this guy's all of a sudden having to do all this work. It's like this is like cruising altitude. It's working okay, right? But then we get over here, right here. All of a sudden, it's really digging in to because of a couple things, like Caleb said. It's not just an EQ issue. It's a dynamic issue as well. They're all kind of related. So.
And this is not abnormal. I face this kind of stuff all the time as a mastering engineer, people that send stuff like this over. And it's impossible to use mastering tools the way they're intended to be used. If you've ever been disappointed with a master that you got back, it might have not been the mastering engineer's problem. It might have been limited by the mix or the production.
Yep.
It's impossible to use the tools. There's nothing you can do. You can only take it so far. You'd have to really pull off everything, and it would just be doing very little, or you'd have to do a ton of work, and it would just sound over processed.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add that I see a lot when we're mentoring our students, and Jake and Caleb probably see this on a regular basis as well. For people that are new to this concept of like, okay, using a limiter, a lot of or just mastering in general, like when they're trying to get into things, what will happen is they'll mix their track. They'll say, okay, it sounds okay, but they're high end in reality. It might sound okay in the mix, but then they take it to mastering, and we hear these ultra like high end like blown out tracks, right? Where like the hi-hat, maybe the snare clashes with the hi-hat, and the sibilance clashes with the hi-hat. It's all this stuff that's just like blown out the high end, and your limiter will really expose that. And so that's the whole idea is the limiter will really kind of expose your mix. And that's all I've got to say, unless you guys want to add anything else.
That's great. This is what it's about, though. But the connection that needs to be made is now it's your turn to go play with some of these tools and see what perspective it gives you that's different from where you have now. What's the reason for that? Again, when we're too close to something, it's really hard to hear sometimes the problems that exist. It's one of the main culprits of people not knowing the process or not knowing how to mix is one thing, but a lot of people are getting better at mixing, but they're spending way too much time on it. They don't have the instincts quite yet. And when you spend too much time on it, it is inevitable because of our biology, the way our ears work, that you will eventually start to play tricks on yourself psychoacoustically. And so this is the stuff that will keep you in check. And so I really want you to all go play with this stuff now. Let's get, go find an analyzer, whether it's a free or cheap one, go find one. Go get, make sure you have a limiter, make sure you have a way of assessing dynamics, and bounce your tracks down to a master and observe them as a master, as a stereo file. That's what we want you to do. And we'll go over a step-by-step kind of instruction of how to do that. But before I do, this is the main takeaway, and I really want you to go play with this on your own. But should we have Dane try to master this track the best he can? If he was, we would never do this, right? We would never master this. But to prove the point,
no, everyone says no.
And not only to prove the point, but just to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah. Proves the point that you can only take it so far. Dane's a very, very good mastering engineer. He's worked with tons of really, really amazing artists. Can he fix this just with mastering? Should we have him try his best to fix it and see how far we can go? And then compare that to day 3 when it's a proper mix, and then have him remaster it and see how much farther it takes the mix. Because he's going to be able to make this sound pretty good. Some of you will be like, oh, it sounds pretty good. But then compare that to how day 3 sounds and just go, okay, there is another level of complexity here that when done properly is the thing that's missing from my stuff sounding industry standard. Right? Should we do that? One's in chat if you're ready for that.
I'll make it sound better. I won't make it sound good.
One's in chat if you want to throw.
I can't fix the vocal. All right, let's do it.
Yeah, that phasing, it's rough.
Okay, we're gonna remove this. And I'll keep it there.
Here comes the lipstick.
By the way, Moodlight didn't send us the tracks like
Oh,
this.
no, not at all. Yeah.
we made it a little worse. So
I intentionally kind of like messed this up, guys.
Yeah, Moodlight, they're really good at what they do.
Yeah.
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 And I'm just going to say, for the record, I would never master this. I always feel like I have to say this, just because
there's always someone
that's like, why are you trying to?
Doesn't sound very
still
good.
Doesn't sound good. Blah blah blah. It's like, okay, good. That's actually the point. It's like,
be clear.
You can't solve these problems in the master, but we're doing this just for the sake of demonstration.
This is my favorite part. This is where we get to throw Dane under the bus. All right, Dane,
Let's do
Rock
it.
and roll.
Okay. Sweet. Lots of clipping. Is what I'm going to be doing. And I'm actually going to use their clipper. Let's find it. Newfangled. There you are. Saturate. Yeah. This is pretty sweet. Oh gosh. Your vocal is just gone after that one line.
Bye-bye.
Stepped away from the mic.
No, she's a really, really good singer. She would never do that. That's all Jake right there. Jake messed this up.
Yeah. Do just another quick layer. Tell you what, before I do that, I'm actually going to do some EQ work here.
Yeah, try to hit that low end.
There he is. Sneaky devil. There's the kick. Gosh. Can't.
Dude, use that transient tool.
I'm going to have to, for sure.
Yeah, use the newfangled.
Oh, this is so annoying.
Those resonant frequencies.
What resonant frequencies?
The vocal. Look at those. It's like the Himalayas, man.
Yeah, right now I'm focused on this low end, so I don't even see that. Listen to what happens if I remove this this instance here at 107. It's like sort of fixed. It's just, oh boy. And then yeah, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna let Soothe do some work on those vocals.
Here it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is a tool I try to shy away from in this frequency range, specifically in mastering, because it can get kind of dangerous. doing some amazing work there, actually. It just kind of blows my mind that we have these tools to like, you were forced to be a great mix engineer back in the day, right? So the danger that we're running into these days, not to get on a soapbox, the danger we've run into with all these nice fancy tools is that people are using them as a crutch, right?
Yep.
So don't do that. Nope. Good grief. Hate you.
Jake's laughing because he knows what he did, and it's really cruel. It's just making it impossible.
Can't be worse than what I did to myself last Mix and Mix.
That's true.
I'm going to actually see if I can't really quickly. I hate using multiband compression on mastering, but I get to do whatever the heck I want, guys, because I've been handed
It's already broke.
a terrible hand.
Yeah, this is about you getting creative about like problem solving.
Like, even after Soothe doing all that work, man,
It's like we're up to like 12 to 15 dB of reduction on those frequencies now.
Call me Jake Bader.
I agree, Mark.
see, I still can't. Yeah, I'm just annoyed at this point. See, this is when I want to literally just cheat and just go like this.
Go for it.
That's not cheating.
Yeah. None of this is cheating.
See where we've come so far.
Good enough.
All right, so I'm afraid to do this, but I think we should be able to get a little bit of. Can't believe it's still a problem. This. It's about 660 there. Just more EQ. Let's see here.
the little dynamic notches.
Yeah. Notice how it just has to work right on that note. You know what? While I've got this up, let's see here. Almost done here.
I don't think guys, you should see the chat.
What? Give up.
Somebody says time for, oh my God, time for 27 OTTs.
27 OTT. Yeah, that could probably help. Oh, look, there it is.
There it is. Oh, of course, you got the expert.
Why not? Oh, I haven't used this since they've updated this interface. It'll be fun to
Really?
see.
Yeah.
At full depth, this thing really blows up.
Oh,
It's actually really vibey in some respect. It would be interesting if there was a mix knob on here
that's the depth, right?
to blend that in. Yeah.
Essentially, it's the depth.
No, I don't
There's
use.
some kind of like transient energy.
Yeah.
happening. You're moving from like flat to like some kind of
Movement.
right. Some kind
It just, I don't like what it's doing frequency wise.
it's just,
It's fun.
My
It's
ears are
fun.
bleeding.
yeah, my ears are bleeding too.
I hate this very much.
Yep. I'm not mixing it.
Oh my
Not mixing it
gosh.
tomorrow anymore.
All
I'll
right.
pick something else.
One last thing. We'll just get this thing up to, let's see. I'm gonna cheat here.
Can't do it. Yeah, that's exactly right, Tony. Vocals clearer at the expense of everything else, right?
Yeah.
Totally. Good observation.
The vocals are clearer, and I don't like that they're clearer because they're not good. It's like, and I can't fix that. So I have to do a dance between how much do I want, right? So, anyways, I pretty much give up at this point, guys. If you're okay with that.
Good
Yep.
job, Dane. Good attempt.
Hey, one's in chat for Dane's
Dane and Jake
Dave's-
together is Jane. So
his attempt. His attempt.
Great attempt. You're such a good sport, dude.
oh, I appreciate it. All right.
Well, that was fun. But let's get back to what's important here. Let's take those tools and run with them. Again, we're going to go really deep on the next 2 days into mixing. We're going to use tons of Eventide's plugins. We're going to show you those, but we're going to go really deep on how to fix this mix, how to build it from the ground up. We're going to start at the very beginning, and what you'll see we do is a lot with less destructive processes. So what you're seeing happen there with what Dane was doing is he's doing so much processing, but it's so very destructive that even if you're fixing a problem, it's causing other problems. And what you'll see, I think, through our process that we're going to show you over the next couple of days is there's a way to just do everything much less destructively. And when you do that, you finally get that product that starts to sound really, really professional. So Jake will really dive into that. In the meantime, overnight, this is about you guys. It's not about this song. We know we can mix this in the next couple of days. It's going to sound great. Dane will remaster it. It's going to sound great. But can you take some of these ideas and principles and apply them to your own mix? So the way to do that, bounce your mix down and import a stereo track into a new session. So treat it like a master. Don't master in your mix session. We don't do that. That's not the way to do it. You got to bounce it down, stereo track, give yourself 6 dB of headroom, pull it into a new mastering session. Get a reference track. Get a frequency analyzer and start comparing the frequency spectrum of your reference track and your mix. See what happens. See if you notice anything. See if anything comes to light that you weren't hearing before. I promise something will come to light, at least something. Observe dynamics. Are there any transients that are crazy out of bounds? Are there any problems with that? You can observe that really just visually a lot of times. And then you can get some information. Oh, my snare, I wasn't hearing it, but maybe a little bit too loud or something. Then apply a limiter. Or if you're new, don't worry about the rest of it. Just bounce it down, pull it into a new session, apply a limiter, turn it up. What problems start to come to the surface that you might have not heard before? It will expose something. There's something that happens when you apply a limiter. It's kind of interesting that the very last thing you do in the entire process of music creation exposes and informs so much about every choice that was made from the very first time someone pressed record all the way through the process. Identify and write down issues that you can fix on your mix based upon your observations. Then starting tomorrow, we're going to show you a whole new way to approach your mix. We're going to walk you through all of that, but you'll have some ammunition. And then if you'd like to, share your findings with the school community, start to interact with each other. Let us know what you took away. Did you find something when you added that frequency analyzer? Did you find something in your dynamics? What did it inform about your mixing process that you might not have seen before? That's what it's really all about. Share that in the community if you'd like to, or share your mix with where it's at right now and get some feedback. It's all good. Anything like that. This is the shortest day of the 3 days. We're going to end here. We're about an hour and a half in. This will be the end of today so that you can go and use these tools and check it out. Starting tomorrow, the sessions will be a little bit longer. We'll probably go between 2 and 4 hours the next 2 days. As we go into the mixing stuff, it's a little bit more comprehensive. So be ready for that. But again, all the replays for this you'll be able to rewatch these. If you have to jump off, don't worry about it. You can jump off anytime and come back. You can watch the replay, and those will be available in the school community. So have fun. Go do your action items. It's been fun hanging out with you today. You guys are asking great questions. You're focusing on the right stuff for the most part. I love to see that. Go have some fun with this, and then tomorrow we'll really dive into the meat of mixing. We're going to go through a whole process. It'll be a lot of fun. So we'll see you same time tomorrow. Thanks, Jake, Jane, and Dake.
Yeah.
Dane and Jake.
Or just Jane collectively.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a good one. Have a good evening.